Good evening. Welcome to Northbeat. I'm Megan Roberts in Edmonton. We begin with breaking news tonight. The government of the Northwest Territories has just announced it is pausing the re-entry of essential workers by road into Yellowknife. It says high winds are expected along Highway 1 this weekend, which could agitate fires in the South Slave region. The GNWT anticipates that Highway 1 will close by Friday and stay closed until at least Sunday. Now, based on that, the GNWT says the re-entry of essential workers will be paused. The only exception is some healthcare-related staff who will return by air. It says this pause of Phase 3 of the re-entry plan allows for the safety of those on the ground in Yellowknife. The territorial government says the Yellowknife Betchicole fire is still categorized as being held, and that this pause is directly related to risks associated with returning by road. Mike Westwick joins us now to bring us the latest on these conditions and, of course, the fires. So, Mike, let's start with what we need to know about these winds that are putting a pause on Yellowknife's re-entry plans.
Yeah, well, the first thing to know is it's not just fires within the Northwest Territories that are expected to be a challenge for Highway 1 and efforts to get folks in there. It's also fires within Alberta. It's the transportation network that's at issue here. On the NWT side of the boundary there, what we're looking at is there's currently an active fire in the Cameron Hills area that is of greatest concern as a result of this wind event. This wind event, we're expecting to see, winds reaching 30 to 35 kilometers an hour sustained, gusts up to 40 to 50 kilometers per hour in certain areas there. And what that's going to do is it's going to push fires that are currently active significantly to the east, under the conditions that we expect to see, which in addition to the winds include, some very hot and dry temperatures, low levels of moisture in the air that support significant fire activity. So it's about keeping folks safe, the fire is going to move. That's a reality with the weather, and that's why the decision was taken.
Okay, let's talk about some of the fires that could be affected by some of these wind conditions in that kind of general region. And starting in Hay River, what's the latest you can tell us on that fire?
Yeah, so, today and yesterday, what we've been seeing is a whole lot of smoke in the area that's been shading the fire from the sun there, causing moisture to be higher, temperatures to be a bit lower, and therefore a little less fire activity. Now, that's good in a sense. It's given us the ability to feel secure accessing different areas of the fire. It's also provided some challenges in terms of getting aircraft off the ground. Yesterday, we weren't able to get any aircraft off the ground. Today, we were able to get some flights in, which is positive for sure. We've been using this reprieve to get as much work done on the ground as we can, preparing for these significant wind events, just as we have for the past few weeks with the firefighting efforts down here.
And what about in Fort Smith? How's the fire situation for that community?
Yeah, Fort Smith, we've been seeing the same sort of conditions. We've been seeing lighter winds. We've been seeing greater levels of smoke coverage, and therefore, a little bit higher levels of moisture in the air, lower temperatures, and therefore less fire activity. Now, moving into tomorrow, we're expecting to see that smoke begin to lift. And we could see some strong winds, strong gusty winds come Friday. And those winds would be coming from the southwest. That's what's forecast. That could cause the fire to grow to the north and to the east. And obviously that is a place where that's nearby communities that we're working to protect. Continued hot, dry conditions. We're really not seeing much reprieve in the South Slave region. But the important thing is that that unified command there, the town of Hay River, Alberta, Parks Canada, our government, have been putting in some incredible work over the past while to get ready for events like this. Things like fuel guards, building large control lines, stretching as far as from Bell Rock towards Fort Fitzgerald. Making sure those sprinkler systems are set up and heavy water systems. Just really impressive work being done down there to prepare for these kinds of challenges.
Okay, and what should people expect then in the next couple of days in this region? What should they prepare themselves to hear about?
Yeah, I think that, the reality is we may see some challenging days here. We may see growth towards communities. We may see significant fire activity. We may see a whole lot of smoke. We may see challenges to firefighters. But I think that, both in Fort Smith and in Hay River, we've seen just what good, proactive, hard-fought firefighting work can do ahead of time to be ready for these severe events and to allow you to successfully defend more areas even upon encroachment. And what I know is that we got great teams working in both these areas who are going to be doing absolutely everything they can to keep these communities safe. Okay, we'll keep an eye on it. Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you. That's Mike Westwick, a fire information officer with the GNWT. As the government pauses the return of essential workers to the capital, the RCMP are warning other residents of the Northwest Territories not to try to return to the communities they left because of wildfires. Police say they have credible information that there's a group of vehicles, up to 50 vehicles in fact, planning to return to Yellowknife. They say the group doesn't plan to stop for checkpoints. There are a number of checkpoints set up along those highways because it's not safe to return. In even some cases, it's not safe to drive there. If you do try to go back and you're not supposed to, police say you will be turned away. And if you try to force your way through, you could be prosecuted. RCMP Corporal Matt Halstead says there are fines under the Emergency Management Act and police could lay criminal charges as well. That message is coming as the NWT Premier tours another evacuation center, this time in Edmonton, where people are eagerly awaiting to hear when they can return home. The CBC's Juanita Taylor has that story.
About 7,000 evacuees have registered in Edmonton. At a media availability today, Northwest Territories Premier Carolyn Cochrane acknowledges all Northerners really want to go home now, but she says she can't give a specific timeline of when that can happen yet. Cochrane repeated what we've been hearing, which is once it's deemed safe for people to return home, essential services will still need to be set up, including gas stations, utilities, grocery stores, the hospital, and that will take another 4 to 5 days. She has a strong message to those thinking of going home before they're allowed. Don't try. You will be turned away.
I want to go home too. We all want to go home. It's hard being evacuated, but it's really important that people not try to go home until they're called, until it's time, because not only do you put yourself at risk, you're actually putting our first responders at risk.
She is urging people to wait until the fires are under control. And that also means it will be a few more weeks until school can start for students. She says a few school divisions in Alberta have offered to open their doors to students, and she says that it is up to families to decide if they want to send their children to school in Alberta. The Premier mentioned she is very concerned about the unhoused population. She says the territorial government is trying to locate them with the help of Alberta shelters and the Territory. They're also launching a family reunification website. As for how people from the north can learn when it is safe to go home, Cochrane says that information will be delivered in one of its news conferences on social media and on its website. They are also encouraging Northerners to reach out to the government for the latest information. Juanita Taylor, CBC News, Edmonton.
Minister of Northern Affairs Dan Vandal was also on that tour with Cochrane. He promised support from the federal government.
I met quite a few people who are from the territories who have been here approximately 2 weeks, and they appeared in good spirits, but they want to go home. There's a lot of uncertainty that's out there, and as we know, uncertainty is taxing. It's stressful. You can tell they're in good spirits, but they're stressed. They want to go home. They're not sure. Things are stabilizing, so they're waiting for the for the official go-ahead so that they can go home and restart their lives. I also want to thank the Alberta government and the city of Edmonton for being here for them. I think this shows a great solidarity amongst Canadians. We're there for one another. We're here to help one another. And our government will be there for Northwest Territory residents for as long as it takes, whatever it takes.
It's been exactly 2 weeks since people living in Yellowknife, Delo, and Detta took on the title Evacuee. That official evacuation order was announced just after 7 p.m. last Wednesday. Kakiza will reach that milestone tomorrow. But for other places, it's been even longer. Fort Smith came first, with an evacuation order issued on August the 12th. That is now 18 days ago. The very next day, just as those folks were figuring out where to stay, what to do in Hay River itself was evacuated, along with Enterprise and the Katla-Deche First Nation. That's also when evacuation started for portions of the Ingrone Trail and Highway 3. Everyone left in those two areas was told to get out on August 16th, the same day as Yellowknife. And it was August 17th. Residents of Kakiza were told they too needed to flee. Since all this started, evacuees have heard bad news, good news, and lots of confusing news. Many are saying it is unsettling to get mixed messages from their own government. Take last week, for example. Officials said there wouldn't be any financial aid for people who evacuated on their own. Then they walked that back. And though they've since announced some funding, there's even more confusion about who's eligible. Carla Ulrich brings us a story of how this sort of changing information takes its toll on people waiting to go home.
Pauline Heron was in Edmonton visiting family when Fort Smith got the evacuation order. Not knowing what to do, she extended her hotel stay and waited for her husband and dog to join her. She got in line at the evacuation center like everyone else to get her hotel voucher, but was shocked to hear they wouldn't cover her hotel, even though there were other evacuees staying there. She said she felt singled out and distressed by the lack of help. Shanna Schaefer evacuated from Fort Smith and then from Hay River with her family. The sudden exit from Hay River left her shaken by the experience. She paid out of pocket for her expenses. She didn't want to take away resources from those who needed it most, hoping that reimbursement would eventually come. But that hope was dashed when the GNWT said there would be no aid for those who left on their own. She felt like she was being re-traumatized. Both women got emotional during our conversation and said they were frustrated with the inconsistent messaging from the GNWT regarding financial aid and support, which is only adding stress to already exhausted evacuees. Carla Ulrich, CBC News, Grand Prairie.
We've heard tonight about some of the difficulties evacuees have had in accessing help, just there from Carla. In Edmonton, 2 Yellowknifers took matters into their own hands to make sure people got fed. Robert Holden brings us this story.
Cynthia and Nazim are 2 evacuees from Yellowknife who both noticed something when they arrived in Edmonton.
We were told dinner, 3 meals will be provided, but it was really not that well organized.
The food was being centralized and being issued in downtown Edmonton. So in order for you to get access to food, you had to get on buses. Some people were in the west end, some people were in the south end. That meant you have to get on 2 buses to go for breakfast, 2 buses to go for lunch, and 2 buses to go for dinner.
It's hard for them to go 3 times in a day to go pick up the meal and come back, especially those low-income families and daily workers people, they can't afford it. They might get reimbursement later, but at the moment, they can't spend from their own pocket.
The 2 joined together. Nazim contacted the Let's Help Society of Alberta, various Pakistani and Islamic organizations, and local restaurants who were happy to help hungry families fleeing wildfires. Cynthia and her husband personally delivered hundreds of meals to evacuees with other volunteers. And just this week, another surprise.
We were approved for about $35,000 donation from United Way and NWT.
Nazim says the response has been the best part.
It is too many smiles to, count. They give us further, strength and happiness, and we transfer those comments and feeling back to donors.
Our association are there to help, thinking beyond that who is from where. The whole idea is to help the people who are in need.
The hotels where they live, they have all type of people. So whichever hotel we deliver, it's been delivered to anyone who's in that hotel, or any evacuee from any religion, any nation, no difference.
They are happy, we are happy, and the donors, everybody feels good that we are making some difference.
That's the CBC's Robert Holden reporting from Edmonton. Now, for the past 2 weeks, all eyes have been on Yellowknife. The entire capital city fled wildfires, as we told you, and this was a first. It had other Northerners asking, what happens if we're next? Chris Windier spent this week trying to answer that question for Whitehorse. Here's a clip from that story, which we'll have for you later on Northbeat.
Every summer, communities across Canada find themselves entered into a grim lottery. In this unprecedented wildfire season, it seems any community can be next. Hit hardest of all this summer, the Northwest Territories. By late August, nearly 3 million hectares had gone up in flames. The hamlet of Enterprise, just south of Hay River, was almost completely destroyed. In Yellowknife, around 20,000 people, nearly the entire population, were ordered to get out.
Wildfires have always been a part of life in the north, but the size and intensity of those fires are increasing. And that raises the question, are we ready for what's coming?
Everyone is going to be saying, who is the hottie on the steps of the police station? Yeah, I still got it.
This is Skyman 911 medevac requesting priority.
Here we go.
Welcome to the world of high responsibility, low pay aviation.
What does it take to reach the top? Meet some truly inspirational people as they share the secrets of their success. It changed everything on CBC News Explore, available free.
At least one parent has reluctantly sent her 4 children back to Saku School in Coral Harbour, Nunavut. Joanna Ningyotya says she kept her kids home from school when the principal was suspended without explanation earlier this month. The school had been closed by the local district education authority, but has since reopened. Nunavut's education minister has said that misconduct allegations against a former teacher are being investigated and that the school is operating under an acting principal.
I finally sent them to school yesterday because they've been begging, wanting to go to school. Tried explaining, I don't feel safe sending you guys to school without a principal. But the rest of the kids were going to school, and sadly, they're back as of today.
Ningyotya says she'll feel more comfortable once the principal is back. Overall, she says she feels communication to parents has been lacking from officials. She says she learned that the school is under the care of an acting principal from CBC News. The government of Nunavut hasn't offered many details about the situation, citing Nunavut's privacy legislation and GN codes of conduct. Yukon RCMP say officers are more and more concerned about organized crime and drug trafficking in the territory. This comes after police arrested Whitehorse resident Taylor Duke last week. Duke faces a litany of charges, including attempted murder related to a shooting on Long Lake Road in July. Before the arrest, police searched a home where they seized 11 firearms, ammunition, magazines, cash, and a large quantity of drugs, including cocaine, Xanax, methamphetamine, and more.
The drugs and firearms seized through this investigation represent a significant disruption to drug trafficking and potential violence in our territory. While investigations continue, we expect to see Duke charged with further offences and will update media and the public as soon as we can.
Before the latest charges, Duke had warrants out for his arrest on a whole list of other serious charges. Police say the amount of drugs and guns they seized makes them concerned about drug activity in the Yukon. A petition to close Rankin Inlet's beer and wine store is headed to the Nunavut government. The petition has been signed by 186 residents. It was presented at a Hamlet Council meeting earlier this week. The CBC's Emma Tranter has those details.
The community voted to open the store back in 2017. Now, some residents want to see it shut down, and some worry about an increase and availability that is leading to alcohol abuse. Harry Tautongi, Rankin Inlet's mayor, says the situation is dire.
The first responders, the RCMP, the nurses, the wellness, mental health, anything to do with first responding and everything is just overwhelming us right now, and it's burning out the systems.
Megan Pizzo-Lyle is a Hamlet counselor. She says closing the store might not be the answer. Anyone from Rankin Inlet can order alcohol through the Nunavut Liquor and Cannabis Commission. Pizzo-Lyle says more mental health and addictions treatment support is needed immediately.
A really difficult situation because we want people to have the same kind of equality as the rest of Canadians. Then the flip side is, with us being such a small community in Nunavut, unique to the rest of Canada, where we don't have the resources and the capacity to deal with things that have been brought on.
The petition is now in the hands of the territorial government. Evacuee's Beer and Wine Store and Rankin's are both permanent.
We somehow need a way to help our community. Just such a problem right now.
Tautungi is warning other communities who voted for a beer and wine store to be prepared for what might come with it. Emma Tranter, CBC News, Iqaluit.
There are more signs that climate change is affecting Canada's Arctic. Parks Canada sent in helicopters last week to airlift hikers out of Ayuituk National Park, where melting glaciers were threatening hikers' safety. The park is near Pangnaktu, Nunavut, on southeastern Baffin Island. Alicia Tunu has that story.
Bryce Stafford and his 4 friends intended to spend 2 weeks hiking Akshayuk Pass in Ayuituk National Park. They were hoping to see the views of Overlord, Odin, Thor, and Asgard peaks, but about a week into the trip, changing weather forced an end to their adventure. Rocks were falling from the melting glacier, and the water levels in the Akshayuk River were running much higher than he expected. Stafford was notified on his satellite device that Parks Canada was closing the pass. Suddenly, he heard helicopters overhead. He knew his adventure was over.
Helicopter went to Pang to refuel, came back to get us. We loaded up. Raining at the time, it was getting a little foggier than it had been before. We took off anyway, got moving further south, but then it was becoming foggier and foggier.
Parks Canada sent in a helicopter to pick up the stranded visitors because of the melting glaciers. Falling rocks, landslides, and fast-moving water were threatening their safety. Karen Smith, a resource manager with Parks Canada, says closing the park is becoming a routine because of climate change.
Part of Akshayuk Pass has a lot of major river crossings, and that visitors have to cross in order to continue on that trail. And in the last few weeks, we've had high amounts of precipitation in and around South Baffin and in the area of Pangnaktung and the pass. And that rain and precipitation has increased the water levels to pretty dangerous levels in that area and making some of those rivers impassable, which can lead to dangerous situations.
Parks Canada warns non-Inuit visitors, including researchers or outfitters, to stay out of the park or face fines up to $100,000. Inuit, however, have full access for cultural practices. Alicia Tunu, CBC News, Iqaluit.
Inuk fashion designer Martha Kayak will soon be heading to New York for Fashion Week this September. Kayak says she got an invite for the world-famous show through Instagram. She has been planning for months, and now the time is almost here. CBC Igalak host Eva Michael spoke with Kayak about the upcoming show.
Is this your first showcase in New York coming up?
Yes, in New York. There were other places in Canada that I did my showcase, that I did fashion shows, but this will be my first time in New York doing a fashion show. And also it's going to be right on Times Square. So one of my designs will be on the billboard in Times Square.
Are all your models Inuit or Indigenous background?
There's going to be 8 Inuit and 1 Indigenous lady. So the rest will be, I don't know which nationality they will be. I'll be going to New York on Monday, on September 4, to pick more models because I have 20 looks. So I already have 9, so I have to select 11 from New York.
How important is it for you to have Inuit as models?
It's very important. It's like showing the world, because New York is the stage of fashion. It's like everyone's going to watch this fashion week. And I'll be showcasing Inuit, and having Inuit models will make a huge difference. And I'm going to be using music that Akkaluk Bethelson created, produced with Charlotte Kamanat throat singing, and the video behind the stage that Akkaluk designed of northern lights and stars and the mountains and the snow will also be played while the models are coming out on the stage. So I'm trying to represent Inuit as much as possible and the Arctic.
And is there special materials or selected materials you're working with?
I was hoping to use sealskin, but there's a ban, sealskin ban in the US. And I want to be very careful of what I bring to US. And I had to speak to a couple of people to make sure that I'm following the rules. So because of the sealskin ban, I decided not to use sealskin and use other materials. And I'll be using a lot of fabrics and pleather.
Did you always hope to do this kind of work while you were growing up in Pond Inlet?
I never thought about ever becoming a fashion designer. I don't think it was even this job ever existed when I was growing up. I've always been creative. I'm already an artist, and when it comes to fashion, I play around a lot and make it really artistic. So, and also I asked Matthew Nookingup to create jewelry from my drawings, and hopefully he's almost done. So there's a lot of Inuit involved in this, and I really appreciate that.
All right, congratulations and good luck with your show.
Thank you.
And that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, including the latest on the NWT wildfires, you can always go to our website, cbc.ca/north. Thank you for watching. I'm Megan Roberts. We leave you tonight with a look at firefighting efforts in Hay River. See you tomorrow from Edmonton.